Hi, everyone. I am Jessica Loretti. I am the managing director of the Anthem Awards. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an amazing event planned where we have brought together a group of amazing human beings who are all judges for the Anthem Awards. And we're going to be talking to them all about what they are looking for in terms of entries and give some advice on how to put together an amazing entry for those of you who are working on your entries now. And we're just going to be talking about the whole judging process and criteria. We're also going to be taking some questions from those in the audience. So if you have questions, please send those in the chat, and we will be talking about those at the end of the panel. So before we get started, I want to share just a couple updates. So again, the Anthem Awards, we're in our second season. The Anthem Awards is brought to you by the Webby Awards. It is the award for purpose and mission-driven work from brands, organizations, and individuals around the world. We just passed our early entry deadline, which means now we're looking at our final entry deadline, which is going to be on Friday, September 23rd. So you only got a couple weeks left to get those entries in. We've had so many amazing projects already enter their work, and we really want to see all the best work out there enter their work, have it be recognized, be a part of the community that we are building, and to have their work recognized across this platform. So thanks again for joining. If you have questions about entries, categories, causes, what is this thing? How is it all organized? Dates, all of that stuff, you can email our customer service team at Kara, K-A-R-A, at anthemawards.com. Also, everything that you need to know is going to be on our website at anthemawards.com. And we also post tons of information on our socials. So make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I want to, before we get started, again, review a little bit about how the award is organized and talk through some of the causes and categories and new categories that we have this year. So I want to just take a minute to explain. So the first way that this award is organized is by 7 core causes. So those 7 causes include diversity, equity, and inclusion, education, art and culture, health, human and civil rights, humanitarian action and services, responsible technology, and sustainability, environment, and climate. Now, within each of those 7 causes, because those are actually very broad issue areas with a lot of different things that people could be working on underneath. So we've created a number of sub-causes underneath each one. So for example, if you choose diversity, equity, and inclusion, you'll probably see in the sub-causes things like gender, race, sexual orientation, parents, veteran status, immigration status, all kinds of different kind of sub-causes that would fit under D, E, and I. And that would go across a number of all the different causes that are included. Each one will have a number of those specific sub-causes. And oftentimes, work could be one cause or another cause or 2 causes. So it's something that you want to look through and think about where you think your work might fit. Now, in terms of categories, we have 5 different category types. So we have awareness categories, community engagement categories, fundraising categories, product innovation or service categories, and a new category type this year is team and workplace initiatives. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the new categories that we have. Within our awareness categories, we've expanded awareness to include awareness and media categories. So we have branded content, digital and innovative experiences, film, video, television, media impact campaigns, news and journalism, podcasts, social media, things like that. In our team and workplace initiatives, we have categories for business leader of the year, young leader of the year, nonprofit leader of the year, also internal organization programs, so employee learning and development, employee volunteering or fundraising, ERG initiatives, hiring initiatives, and special workplace initiatives. So there's lots of different categories. There's lots of different causes. It's a very robust and comprehensive award that covers lots of different kinds of things. So again, if you have questions, please reach out. Our customer service team is happy to help you. Okay, enough for me. Without further ado, I would love to introduce our amazing panel of judges that we've brought together today. So let's bring them up on the screen. We have three amazing humans here today. Chloe Barnes, who is the Curation Standards for Representation and Inclusion from Twitter. Lindsay Stein, Chief Purpose Officer at Tombras. And Erica Soto-Lam, Vice President of Social Impact at Comedy Central. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Hi, you're on mute.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to see all of your amazing faces. So I want to take a minute and let you all introduce yourself and a little bit about your work. If you want to just say a few words about your background, what you're currently doing, stuff that you're interested in. Chloe, you want to get us started?
I would love to. First and foremost, thank you, Jessica, and the team at the Anthem Awards and the Webby Awards and all of my friends there for having me today. I'm really excited. First day back post-birthday vacation, and this is the only thing I would be actually excited for to come back from vacation. What I do, I work at Twitter for almost 2 years now. I serve as the lead for Curation Standards, and I focus specifically on representation and inclusion. What does that mean? That means that anything that you see on Twitter in our curated products, so that's trends, moments, events, even the topics that you follow, I make sure that we are accurately representing all of the diverse voices and communities on our platform with empathy and authenticity.
Awesome. Lindsay?
Hi. Also, thank you. I'm so excited to be a judge this year at the Anthem Awards. So this is actually day 2 at Tombras as their first Chief Purpose Officer. So I am stoked to be here on day 2. So before that, I was the Chief of Social Impact at Havas, New York. And then for a long time, I was a journalist covering the advertising industry. I feel like I was on a path for a long time to help elevate and transform the industry and try to make it better at advertising and marketing. When I was at campaign, we launched the Power Purpose Awards. So these types of purpose-driven awards are really close to my heart. And yeah, at Tombras, I'll be working on internal initiatives as well as externally, working with our clients and prospects to help them figure out their purpose and hopefully do more good in the world.
Awesome. And Erica?
Thank you, Jessica and Chloe and Lindsay. It's so great to be in this session with you. My name is Erica Soto-Lam, and I am a Vice President for Social Impact at the MTV Entertainment Group. The space at the bottom, that's way too many words for MTV Entertainment Group, but we're actually a group of 9 brands that is principally led by MTV, but also includes VH1, Comedy Central, Logo, Smithsonian, Paramount, Pop. And the part of the work that I lead is campaigns. So we develop social issue campaigns that will take our audience from, highly entertained to educated, engaged, and hopefully activated on various social issues, whether that is voting or racial justice or mental health for themselves or their loved ones, or all of the ways that those and many other issues intersect. So I'm really grateful that this is my second year as a judge for the Anthem Awards, to learn from the entries and see how we can all, whether you're a nonprofit or a company, do more to do good in the world from whatever position you're in.
Amazing. Thank you all again so much for being here and for being a part of our judging community, and also just for all of the work that you do every day. So the first question I want to talk about a little bit high level. So Chloe and Erica, you were both judges last year. I want to talk a little bit about what some of your takeaways were. I mean, I heard some feedback after the first inaugural season. One woman wrote to me and was like, this whole process, like 1 minute I was crying, the next minute I was laughing, the next minute I was just smiling with joy. I was so inspired by looking at all this work. So there's so many different kinds of projects that people are working on from all kinds of different vantage points and industries. And can you just talk a little bit about, what were some of your takeaways from last season? And was there anything that was like, stood out to you as exciting or surprising or really inspiring from your participation as a juror from last year?
Sure. Yeah. And ditto, same to whomever said that to you. And, from the judge's perspective, the platform, as I understand it, it's like totally random which projects you're going to get to assess. And from one entry to the next, it could be totally different subject matter, totally different organizations or parts of the world. And that I found that to be really exciting, and like, what's going to be next after I review this one and give my input on how I think it stacks up. That is the beauty of, I think, the Anthem Awards, is that it's not strict silos. And Jessica, you went through like the various categories, that there are ways in for people to hopefully get their flowers for the good work that they're doing, and by telling a story that we can like give you that shine via your entry. And that from working in a company right now, that the benefit of those awards is also because people are proud of that. It makes them proud of where they work. And I think from the leadership perspective, it knowing that you're doing good work, or work that's being nominated for awards even, is a way to fuel the ability to do more of that, which I think so many of us want to do from whatever company or organization that we work for.
And I'll jump off of what Erica was just sharing. So plus 100 to everything that she just mentioned. One of the things that I will also add that I found to be really interesting is that when I've served as a judge on other awards or what have you, it's oftentimes you have to be of a certain size of company or a certain notoriety or what have you to get any type of attention or recognition. I think the thing that was most exciting to me about the Anthem Awards, about truly how inclusive it was, not even necessarily just in the categories, but everything from race, ethnicity, ability, background, industry. There were types of awards from all different types of folks that were phenomenal. And I think that if I could reiterate anything, and the thing I'm probably most excited about this year in judging entries as well, is just how much of an opportunity it is for anyone that's leading impactful work to contribute materials and to be considered. I would definitely, even if you're not necessarily a big brand, I would definitely recommend, if there's something that you're proud of and is making a difference, please, go ahead and submit your application. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that most interests me when I first started on, building this brand and community was really around a similar idea. It's like a lot of awards in the social impact space are particular to an industry or to a cause, and this is really across everything. So it really creates this new platform for all of this work, and really, for people to come together and sit at the same table and share their work and collaborate and partner. Because I know sometimes, folks who are working on one issue don't talk to folks who are working on another issue. And there's so much opportunity there. So that's what's really exciting to me about this whole thing as well. Lindsay, you weren't a part of our Academy last year, but we're so grateful and happy to have you this year. Can you talk a little bit about what you're most excited about as we go into this second season?
Sure. I know, Jessica, you mentioned some of this earlier, but I am really excited about some of the expanded categories, especially since I came from the media side. I really love that you expanded the awareness in media categories. I think there's a new news and journalism one, a podcast and audio, which I'm sure there'll be a ton of entries for. There's some really amazing podcasts out there. Media impact campaign, I'm really excited for that. And also the grassroots organization of the year. I think that is an awesome, really unusual category. So I'm really stoked to see what comes out of there. And then also just on like the product innovation and design side of things, I'm always looking for how brands and companies can take an issue and try to solve it from a design perspective, whether if you guys are familiar with like the Tough Turbans that was created by Zulu Alpha Kilo, and Harley Davidson in Canada. And that was created to help Sikh men wear protective headgear when they ride motorcycles, or Lacoste and BETC created that line of adaptive swimwear with Theo Curran, and it was the first time a disabled athlete had his own line of clothing and helped design it. And it was adaptive clothing, but anyone can wear it, adaptive or not. It was really, really cool clothing line. So even going back further, like Xbox Adaptive Controller, I love seeing when a brand or nonprofit can come together and really create something that can solve an issue or help a community. So excited to see some of those product innovations too.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, I'm sure what folks on the line are dying to hear about is the criteria and what you're looking for in judging. So I wanted to review just quickly 2 important points about judging. So one, some other types of awards are competitive within a category. So it's like, is this project better than this project? And the Anthem Awards is not organized like that because of the nature of the kinds of work and the diversity of work that folks are looking at. So I want to reiterate that every piece of content or entry that is submitted is held up to a standard of excellence and a criteria. And so there can be many winners or no winners in each distinct category because of the nature of that organization. So the criteria that we use for judging, so these folks on the line here can tell you, so when they're looking at each entry, they are reviewing for concept, execution, inclusivity, engagement, impact, and then an overall vote or review of the work. So I want to think about, like, how can you all share in different ways? How do you quantify, or what are you looking for in terms of some of the more impact specific criteria? So impact, engagement, and inclusivity. Can you talk about, how do you think about, like, is this impactful? Like, or is this not impactful? Like, how would you judge that or think about that work?
I can start. Especially given the nature of my work at Twitter, I spend a lot of my time in the DE&I and representation space. So speaking specifically to inclusivity, one of the things that I noticed last year is that when folks are submitting entries, they may have been inclusive to a particular group. Maybe it was a particular ethnicity, or maybe it was a particular, insert particular category here. But what I think is really interesting and important, especially as it relates to inclusivity, is even thinking outside of that scope. So yes, like, this particular campaign may resonate with this particular group, but how are we also making that campaign, like, accessible? How are we thinking about alt text? How are we thinking about the images that we use? How are we thinking about, those other pieces as well, to make sure that inclusivity is intersectional? I think a lot of entries may have missed the mark on that last year, and the ones that I think you saw win touched on a lot of those different pieces in a few different ways. So I'll speak to inclusivity and making sure that it's as intersectional as possible, and kind of keeping a broad lens when you're thinking about who you want to engage in that work.
That's great feedback. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Impact or engagement?
Yeah, I can add. And Jessica, I think the criteria that, center myself in before I go in and read the entries is really smart. But I also look to the entrant telling me what their goals were, and because, the projects, as you said, are so diverse, coming from so many different types of organizations, focusing on so many different issues, that, seeing, if you tell me what the goal is, I need to be able to see that you met it or exceeded it or got close, because some of these issues are really hard, right? There are organizations with goals that we need to have, like ending poverty or ending gun violence, like that. Yes, please have those North Star goals. But I think, communicating what the goal for that particular campaign or project or event, whatever it might be, was. And it can be like, we needed to fundraise X dollars to provide, support to refugees, or relief in the event of a climate crisis, or, having that be a part of the story you tell about your work, I think is really important to say, this is exceptional work because their charge was this and they did it, or they really moved the needle in the direction of being able to achieve big goals.
Actually, I want to piggyback off of that because I totally agree with Erica. And I think that sometimes, especially from my experience of judging smaller businesses or nonprofits, maybe are a little bit shy about talking about their impacts. I think it's too small. But if you are upfront with that goal, it doesn't mean it's too small. If it was a call to action, or if it was maybe, in a small community and it was out to drive votership in this one community, or if your goal was to raise an X amount of money and it's not millions of dollars, et cetera, right? Like, or if it's a behavior change, or if it's just engaging employees in a new way. It doesn't necessarily have to be this huge pie in the sky, initiative with billions of dollars, millions of dollars behind it. But if you can have that goal, like Erica said, and then say how you reached it, like, it doesn't mean it's too small. It's just every impact has a difference. So one, just see what that impact is, regardless of how big or small you might think it is.
Yeah, I like to say, and sometimes you do want to like move the ocean or create a wave, but it also matters when something you do adds a drop in the bucket that fills it up, and that like does move everything in the direction of helping a community or addressing our many, social ills.
And I also wanted to add actually to what Lindsay shared about the impact being a behavior change. I think sometimes when we're putting together these application materials, we've all done so much that we want to talk about what we did, but that's necessarily the impact of what we actually did, right? So when you think about impact, it's sometimes helpful for me, even in the projects that I lead, to think about what behavior change, whether it's our community or whether it's my organization or what have you, what behavior change am I hoping to evoke from my work? And then how did we go about doing that? Was it through raising money? Was it through, implementing X amount of programs? Was it through partnering with this community organization? So think about impact in regards to changing behavior. And I think it'll help connect a lot of those other dots as well, outside of just making a bullet list of the things that you actually executed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking through some of the other criteria that are more around concept and execution. So, as I mentioned before, we have entries that are from some of the largest global brands in the world and some of the smallest grassroots local organizations, in the same category, and you're looking at the same work. So how do you think about looking at concept and execution when you obviously realize that, like, some people have bigger budgets, some people have creative agencies or more resources, or the laundry list goes on of things that some people have and others don't have access to. So how do you think about concept and concept and execution with that lens in mind, looking at the different entries from bigger or smaller organizations?
I guess I'll start really quickly on that. I think, just to touch on the organizations that have smaller budgets, personally, and I don't know how the other judges would, feel across the board, but I think it's fine to also mention that you had a smaller budget and here's what you were able to do with it. Here's what you were able to execute with it. Not necessary to mention that, but totally fine to mention we had $5,000 and this is what we were able to do. And we're proud of what we were able to do with that. But also, and this is like a cheesy saying, but I do feel like, there are so many entries. So if there's a way to kind of paint word pictures in a way and really draw the judges in, make it, what was the origin story? What was the reason behind this? Was there a personal connection? Was, what was kind of the starting off point, the launching point for this specific cause? Or, why this, why now? And I also feel like, I love having quotes or something like that to kind of, like I said, paint word pictures, give it a little bit more of a story feel, less of like the textbooky feel. But of course, keep the facts in there. We need that too. But, we're all reading a ton of these entries. So we want your passion to kind of seep through the page, at least I do when I'm reading these entries. So from the concept to how you executed it, put your passion in the words.
Okay, let's go on to the other part here, which is like the actual materials that folks are submitting for their entries. So there's two parts to the entry. There are forms where you will put in written text around your summary of project and strategy, your goals or objectives, and then the results and impact. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but do you have any other tips on what types of information should folks be including in those sections? I mean, one thing that I noticed that I'll share feedback for folks around is that sometimes I think when people are really close to their own work, they think that certain things are obvious. And I would just really encourage people to put some of the most basic information in those, especially in the summary. You know, what is this organization? What is the project that you're working on? You know, some of that stuff that might seem obvious or kind of just inherent, it's not, because a lot of folks won't know your organization or won't know what you're up to, and they'll just be looking at this cold. And so that background and context is super important to include. Does anyone else on the call have thoughts about like what are some of the things that people should be including in those written fields?
I'll comment first, Jessica, on the point that you just made. I would also recommend that folks try to think in, maybe it's because I work at Twitter, like think in sound bites. It's really difficult when you have so many entries to be reading paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. So if you're thinking something like 2 to 3 sentences per point or what have you, that's always really helpful from that perspective. I would also say in those, in that section, what was really cool for me to see in some of the entries before, when you're talking about project strategy, goals, and objectives, and especially even for some of those newer categories like workplace and all of those things, who are the cross-functional partners that you were able to work with? Like, who could you get on board to help execute your project? I think when I was looking at entries last year in regards to execution, a lot of what I looked for, like, is there a sustainability plan? Like, is this just for an award, or how is it going to continue moving forward? And I think being able to show buy-in from other parts of your organization, or even if you partnered with another organization outside of your own, and being able to tell that story, again, even in short bullet points during that section, is really helpful too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would second that, like, broader context about how what you did in this entry is, and it doesn't need to go on forever because campaigns end, but that it is a part of a broader body of work that preceded it and will continue it, given that at the core of everything is a purpose or a goal for social good. That I think, you know, having some understanding of that was what we did for that moment, but it will feed into other good work is key. And then I think seconding Chloe and everyone who knows, like, when it's your own work, it's harder to sort of lift up from the trees and get out of the details. So if you can have someone from like another department, but who knows about the work, but can tell you what to cut and what to add, if you're not presenting that sort of concise but yet thorough story about what you did and what its impact was.
Absolutely. And I think even just something that you all have said in passing is around just formatting. So again, like, you can use bullets, right? Like, visual formatting in that section can really help someone read something and understand it and really take it in with some ease, especially when folks are looking at a lot of things. So really think about storytelling, really think about the sustainability of your project, really think about the visual nature of the text and how it will appear to someone who's reading it. And also just make sure you include some of those most basic elements for folks to read. And then now the second part of that is that we allow for people to upload. You can either upload documentation or photographs or things like that. You can have a URL to a website. You can post a video. Now, I know that a lot of folks who come from bigger organizations will have resources to make like a case study video or a case study website, which is obviously wonderful for them to be able to do that. And it really presents the project with a lot of ease. But for folks who don't have the resources to do something like that, is there any preference in like how you think about looking at this stuff? Like, is it better to just have something other than nothing? Is it better to have some photos from an event maybe, or put together, a Google Doc or a Google presentation with just a couple elements for something to look at? Can you talk a little bit about the visual representation and supporting details of folks' entries?
Yeah, I mean, I totally think that if you don't have the means to create a case study, you don't have the budget for that. Even just, screen grabbing some from, if there's press that would cover the event or the campaign, or, there's a lot of free apps you can download that you can just make a little photo collage of meaningful aspects of the campaign. I think any kind of visual aid is super helpful. So like, I definitely would try to say do that, an infographic. There's a lot of low budget ways you can kind of bring it to life.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that, if you don't have the budget for a video editor, that shouldn't be a barrier, because, even just picking, if there happens to be one photograph or one image or collage, as Lindsay said, that is a great pairing to the words. And, our brains need both the words to understand, to pair with that and really solidify in our minds what you did.
Okay, great. And so we're starting to get some questions from the audience here. So the first question is, and this is a question we get a lot, do you think that individuals or small teams and organizations have as much of a chance at winning as bigger, more well-known ones?
I see, totally. I mean, I think, Jess, you said it earlier, that we're not comparing smaller organizations and smaller budgets that go with that with big organizations with big budgets in the same, back to back. We are really looking at each body of work as its own thing and thinking about whether or not it meets the mark of the criteria that's been laid out. So I think that, and I do think that's a pretty novel and different setup as awards go, and that I think is in line with purpose and social good work still being in its early days. I mean, it's evolved a lot, but it isn't as established as advertising or some other types of awards and those evolve too, of course, but I think we're still figuring out how we can do this, and we should keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd also add too, I think that when you sometimes have larger organizations, because there's so many different stakeholders, sometimes the message, while important, has the opportunity to get pretty broad. I think what is cool about smaller organizations is that they have the opportunity to really narrow in maybe on a particular community or population or an issue that's impacting the spaces that they engage in a way that's able, again, back to the impact, to show very concrete impact from their campaign, from their work, or what have you. And I think sometimes those storytelling elements as well with a smaller organization can actually be even more powerful, because you get more firsthand accounts as to how that work has actually impacted the community that they serve in. So I definitely think that there's opportunities for smaller organizations to win as well.
Awesome. The next question is, were there any projects last year that really surprised you? I mean, I could just share, I can't think of any one particular project that surprised me, but one of my greatest takeaways was that really when you see all of the winners on the platform, you just see how many different people are working on how many different projects from all kinds of different angles and perspectives and points of view and industries. That to me was just honestly pretty overwhelming. And I even hesitate to use the word inspiring, because it's a bit cheesy or whatever, but it really just was this very validating moment where you see, kind of as Erica was just describing, like this is becoming an industry. And I don't say that as like a negative thing. I say that as a very positive thing. This is becoming an industry where people all around the world are really realizing that they need to do this work, that there's a professionalization that's coming with new roles and new job titles across every industry that are popping up. And there's a lot of learning and development that comes along with that. And so just to see the accumulation of all of that work is almost like, wow, like look at this decade we've been working at this and look at all these amazing people. And it really is just truly inspiring and hopeful. I don't know if anyone else has anything.
Yeah, I think we're collectively like raising the level of play by learning from each other and setting standards for what good work is.
Right.
And, you know, I can't remember any specific entry, but that's not because they weren't amazing. It's because I have a bad memory. But what I will say is, like, in particular, this is probably also because I do work for a big brand, that seeing, you know, and I live in New York, like it's harder to see what's happening on the ground. You can like only see what's in front of you, and having the opportunity to read through how local or smaller organizations are tackling problems was helpful for me in the context of like, well, outside of the awards, what can we do to invest in organizations on the ground that are more directly touching the issue versus, you know, the kinds of things that we are able to do with bigger brands, which are like having a big bullhorn and having, you know, being able to do things that get everybody at once, but don't touch them as closely. And I think it takes all of that kind of work to make change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say too, the thing that surprised me, again, not necessarily one particular entry, but it was really cool to see so many of the nominees and the award winners interact and engage with each other and share resources and best practices and like develop their own network in a way. Even, you know, the judges, us being able to connect and chat about the work that we're leading within our own organizations. I think that was something that even when I signed up to judge, that wasn't something that I necessarily anticipated, but has been such a great benefit of being engaged. The network piece was really surprising as well.
And I just wanted to jump in really quick. It's actually something that Chloe brought up earlier. And I wasn't a judge last year, but just I went through the work just to see, you know, the winners from last year. And I know Chloe mentioned the inclusivity part and how important that is. And while there maybe weren't, a ton of super inclusive in terms of like auditory, visual, auditory, or maybe amputees, et cetera, there were actually a decent amount, more than I've seen in the past. So I think there's definitely been a bigger push for inclusivity in all different areas and intersectionality. And it's like, I was definitely impressed with the level I saw of the inclusivity and definitely hoping to see even more this year, like Chloe mentioned. So, yeah.
We have a question around the entry fees. So I want to reiterate. So we have two different fees. There is a fee for nonprofit organizations, and then there is a fee for for-profit organizations, because obviously we recognize that folks are working on different budgets. We do also offer scholarships for folks who are interested in applying for those, which would include a waiver of the fee. So if you are interested in applying for a scholarship, you can email our customer service team, Kara, again, Kara at anthemawards.com. She can help you with that scholarship entry. Okay, and then I think this will be our last question. What is the most meaningful thing to you about your role as a judge?
I'll say the opportunity to learn from others in the field is really why I do this.
I think, seeing all of these organizations' superpowers in a way, their social impact and purpose-driven superpowers, and the amazing change that we can make when we all work together is just so inspiring. So like Erica said, just learning and being inspired by this work is really gratifying.
And similarly to Erica and Lindsay, I would just say being encouraged is the most meaningful thing to me. It's so cool to see how many folks we had last year that this may have been their first campaign, or maybe, you know, it's their 100th campaign, and they're still so committed and passionate about the work that they do. And regardless of whatever space they occupy, whatever industry, as a judge, it's great to know that we're all still working and doing this together, in whatever capacity that is. And, you know, we've all had a lot of really hard days. So it is nice to have that encouragement, and that's really meaningful to me.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for being a part of this and for being a part of our community. Thank you everyone who's on the line today. As a reminder, our final entry deadline is Friday, September 23rd. So you have a couple weeks left, but get your entries in today. Again, if you need help, you can reach out to our customer service team. We're happy to talk you through. You know, we get lots of questions about which category would you recommend? Which cause does this fit into? We're happy to talk you through all of that. So please just reach out to Kara, and we'll help you all with that. And we're just looking forward to seeing all your entries. And we thank you all for the work that you do every day, continue to do day in and day out in this space. And we're just looking forward to more opportunities to get together and bring this community together. We're going to be hosting some events in September in Los Angeles, New York City, and Washington, D.C. So look out for invites about that. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.